Turning 18 feels like this weird finish line where everyone expects you to suddenly have your life figured out. You get told you're an adult now, but nobody actually sits you down and tells you the stuff that actually matters going forward. So in this video, I want to walk through the things I genuinely wish someone had told me back then, because looking back, so many of these would have saved me years of doing things the hard way. Let's get into it. First thing I wish someone told me is that motivation is not something you can rely on. When you're 18, you kind of assume that if you just find the right goal or the right passion, you'll feel motivated every single day and that feeling will carry you. But motivation shows up for maybe the first 2 weeks of anything, and then it just disappears. And the people who actually end up successful aren't the ones who stayed motivated the whole time. They're the ones who kept showing up on the days they didn't feel like it. Discipline isn't some trait you're either born with or you're not. It's really just a rep you build the same way you'd build any other skill. Next up is that what you post and do now sticks around a lot longer than you think it will. At 18, it feels like everything is temporary. A post disappears from your feed, a moment gets forgotten, and you move on to the next thing. But in reality, very little of what you put online actually disappears. This isn't about living in fear of every decision. It's just about knowing that the internet remembers more than you think it does. Next thing I wish someone told me is that right now is the youngest and the most time-rich you're ever going to be again. At 18, time feels like this endless resource, like you've got forever to start whatever you're going to start. And in a lot of ways, you do have more room to recover from mistakes now than you ever will again. But that room isn't unlimited, and the earlier you actually start, whether that's with money, with skills, with habits, the more space you give yourself to mess up, adjust, and still come out ahead. The version of you at 30 is being built right now, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Next up is that you're going to grow apart from people you thought you'd be close to forever, and that doesn't mean anything went wrong. At 18, your friend group feels permanent. Like these are the people who will know everything about your life forever. For some people, that ends up true. For a lot of people, life just takes you in different directions. It's not always a fight or a falling out. Sometimes it's just distance and time doing what they do. Next thing I wish someone told me is that your habits right now don't just disappear. They quietly build up in the background and show up later. At 18, you can get away with almost anything. Bad sleep, eating whatever, barely moving, and you'll still feel fine the next day. So it's easy to assume your body just works like this forever, but those habits don't reset every morning. They stack. The people who take care of their sleep, their movement, and what they eat starting now aren't doing it because they feel amazing today. They're doing it because this is the cheapest time to build those habits, before life gets more complicated. Next up is learning to actually sit with being uncomfortable instead of avoiding it. At 18, discomfort feels like a signal that something is wrong. So you avoid the hard conversation, you avoid the class that challenges you, you avoid putting yourself in situations where you might look dumb, but almost everything that ends up mattering later came from doing something uncomfortable first. If you spend your late teens only doing what feels comfortable, you end up in your 30s wondering why nothing changed. Next thing I wish someone told me is that failure isn't something to avoid. It's just information. At 18, failing at something feels like proof that you're not good enough or that you shouldn't have tried in the first place, so you avoid trying out for things, applying for things, or putting yourself out there. Because not trying feels safer than trying and losing. The people who end up ahead aren't the ones who never failed. They're the ones who failed, adjusted, and kept going, instead of treating one bad outcome as the final answer. Next up is that you need to start paying attention to money now, even if you barely have any. It doesn't matter if you're only working a part-time job or making close to nothing. The habits you build with small amounts of money are the same habits you'll have with bigger amounts later. If you're the type of person who spends everything the second it hits your account at 18, that same habit just scales up as your income grows. The earlier you build that awareness, the less it costs you to fix it later. Next thing I wish someone told me is that being bored isn't a problem you need to fix immediately. At 18, the second you feel bored, your hand goes straight to your phone, and that gap just gets filled instantly, every single time. But boredom is actually where a lot of your best ideas and your sense of who you are come from. Learning to be alone with your own thoughts without immediately reaching for a distraction is a skill, and it's one that gets harder to build the longer you wait. Nobody mentions this enough. Next up is learning how to say no. At 18, it feels like saying yes to everything, every plan, every favor, every request is what makes you a good friend or a good person. But saying yes to everything usually means you're saying no to your own time and energy without even realizing it. Learning to say no, even to people you care about, isn't rude and it isn't selfish. If you don't learn this early, you spend your 20s exhausted, wondering where all your time went. Nobody mentions this enough. Next thing I wish someone told me is that asking for help isn't a sign that you're behind. It's actually how everyone who's ahead of you got there. At 18, there's this pressure to act like you already know things, to nod along when you're actually completely lost, because admitting you don't know feels embarrassing. Most of the time, the only difference between someone stuck and someone moving forward is that one of them was willing to ask and look a little clueless for a few seconds. Next up is that you don't need to have your passion or your future career figured out right now. There's this pressure at 18 to pick a major or a path and be completely certain about it. Like changing your mind later means you failed somehow. But almost nobody actually ends up doing exactly what they thought they would at 18. Most people find their direction by trying things, realizing what they don't like, and adjusting from there. And the last thing I wish someone told me is that nobody actually has it figured out. At 18, you look at adults, your parents, teachers, people a few years older than you, and you assume at some point there's a switch that flips and suddenly life makes sense. But that switch never really comes. Every single person you look up to is still kind of figuring it out as they go. They've just gotten better at hiding it or made peace with not knowing everything. That feeling doesn't go away at some magic age. You just get more comfortable moving forward without all the answers. So those are the things I wish someone had actually told me at 18. None of these would have made life perfect, but they definitely would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of unnecessary stress. Let me know in the comments what you wish someone had told you at 18, and if this one hit for you, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.